And now the Rebbe says that we are already psyching ourselves to live in the spirit of Geula. We should already practice this love. So good evening. Tonight is the eve of Chavtes, the 29th of the month of Tamuz. And we are towards the end. I don't know if we'll finish today because sometimes Hakol Holech Achar Chisum, which means everything follows the conclusion. Sometimes conclusion takes a little bit longer, but we are spending some time and getting towards the end of chapter 49 that talks about Kamayim Apanim Lapanim, that what kind of love can be awakened within our hearts to the extent that we would be willing to give away everything that we are attached to for the sake of Hashem, knowing the tremendous tzimtzumim that He subjects himself or his light to in order to come down to this world and create a relationship with us. And we have been spending time around the brachos before Shema, which Shema is a time when we reach the epitome of this love that is inspired by the awareness of the oneness of Hashem and us being one with Him. And it's like one spirit cleaving to the other. It's called in Kabbalah neshikין. It's like a kiss. You might ask, we learn from the Rebbe, we're on page Ayin in the Tanya, which corresponds to page 39 in the Tanya. I don't know by you, Hasidah, what page it is, but we are the last page of the Perek Memtes of chapter 49. And the Rebbe is talking about a yichud, a unification with Hashem that is called neshikין, like kissing. And the Rebbe says that the main thing of this kind of yichud or unification is the yichud of Chabad b'Chabad, of the yichud of the consciousness and the mental capacity and awareness of the person with the Chabad, the divine, the Chabad of Torah, the divine Chabad, Chochmah Bina Das of Hashem. How is it? Through the study of Torah and uttering it with our mouth. You might ask, how Chabad b'Chabad, this is like two minds are being connected, but how is that a kiss? So for Hashem, Chochmah also, what is the inyan of a kiss? And Rabbi Ginsburg is going to a long discussion. I'm not going to tire you with that, but it's a beautiful, deep discussion, encouraging to look it up. And why this yichud through the study, through the mental unification is called kiss? What's the idea of kiss? The idea of a kiss is that when you want to communicate something which is be'erech to the recipient, is something which is corresponding to the manifestation of it. It's like when you have a certain amount of love or a certain amount of appreciation, it's limited, or a certain amount of understanding of, let's say, somebody's milas and virtues and good qualities. So you can express that bedibur. You can express that by saying to the person you appreciate, how much you appreciate the person, what they do, and how they contribute to you and to the world, and so on. And you can express this love bedibur. And so too, concepts. You can express everything bedibur. But when you have a quality, a love, that is infinite, love that is avaraba, love that is not finite, is not limited. The appreciation is unending. It's so big, it's so huge. And the love and the wish to merge is so great that words cannot contain that feeling anymore. So instead, that feeling is expressed through an action which is really very far from the feeling itself. The feeling itself is tremendous love. You can't speak it anymore because it's too big for words. So what do? Two mouths, two sets of lips are kissing. It's like a gesture, it's like a motion, it's like an act. Begashmius that is not be'erach, it's not in relation, it's not in proportion, or not in relation, or incomparable, not in comparison to what it comes to represent. So how come you call Chabad b'Chabad, that the Chabad of a person unites with Chabad of Hashem through the Torah? How come you call it kissing? It's not kissing, it's the mental thing, I can say it. So the Rabbi Ginsburg explains, because by Hashem, Hashem intelligence or wisdom is like action by us. It's the same thing. Action and wisdom, what we call wisdom, and we call mental activity or intellect or iskashros through concept, all this by Hashem is like action. It's like physical asiya. It's the same thing. There is no relation, is no erech, is no proportion to that love, that he feels towards us. So the meeting of Chabad, of a person with Chabad of Hashem through the learning, but we are talking real learning of Torah where you're really present, in the learning of the Torah, that is called in Kabbalah neshikין. It's called a kiss with the divine. And the last thing that we said last time is this line, like in the middle of the paragraph, more or less, the line that starts bechabad, vehu iyun haTorah. So we are connecting our Chabad, the Chochmah Bina Das, our understanding, our creative conceptualizing power, our ability to analyze and dissect, and contain and formulate mentally and so on, and our ability to connect personally to what we understand, Das, which is the ability to internalize, make it part of the way we think, part of the way we feel. That is really connecting us with the Chochmah Bina Das of Hashem, of Atzilus and higher. How? The Rebbe teaches us through iyun haTorah, through learning Torah. And then the Rebbe says, V'hapeh hu motza haruach vegiluyav, or giluyo, bivchinas gilui. The peh, the mouth, is the exit of the spirit, is exit, but the spirit can be revealed. The divine spirit can be revealed. V'hainu b'chinas hadibur b'divrei soira. That's the speech, the talking of divrei Torah. So Rabbi Ginsburg is explaining here, Hapeh hu motza haruach vegiluyo vehu gilui, b'chinas gilui. Here Rabbi Ginsburg explains that it's not about the importance of saying Torah with your mouth. That will come next. This, when the Rebbe says here in the Tanya, V'hapeh hu motza haruach vegiluyo b'chinas gilui, that means that your learning Torah has to come all the way of a declaration from the mouth. Explains Rabbi Ginsburg, it doesn't mean here the physical talking. It means here that when there is shakla v'tarya, when there is a theoretical, so to speak, discussion in the Gemara or in Halacha, back and forth, about any subject that comes up, it has to come all the way to Devar Hashem Zo Halacha, which means we have to bring the discussion in order to bring this concept all the way from its hidden state to a revealed state, to complete this process of this kissing with the divine, you need to take every subject and bring it all the way to the halacha, to the psak, to the final clear decision of what would be the legal ruling regarding this matter. That's here the inyan of Dvar Hashem zo halacha. That's Yishakeni nishikos piyu. That's the inyan of kissing. Dvar Hashem zu halacha. So when a person grasps a certain halacha in the Mishnah and the Gemara thoroughly, all the way to the psak, what would be the legal verdict, that is creating that unification, that kiss with the divine. Vahainu, look inside, that means B'chinas hadibur b'divrei soira. It's the speech of divrei soira, meaning that we have to bring every subject all the way to the real plane of how it applies in our reality. Ki dafka specifically al motza pi havaya yichyeh ha'adam. In order for men to get life, it has to be motza pi havaya, which means motza means to come out, to exit the mouth of Hashem, which means when we are speaking words of Torah, and especially here we're talking about halacha, because the halacha is reflecting the divine will and the divine wisdom and divine will. So we need to not to suffice with a theoretical discussion of the subject, we have to bring it down all the way to the gilui, to the conclusion of the halacha, of the halachic resolution. That's the point that the Rebbe is making here, and that gives life to the person. Al motza pi Hashem yichyeh adam. That the person lives, even the nefesh hachiyunis, even the vital soul and the body, get life from bringing the knowledge of the Torah down to the reality in which we live. Now the Rebbe is adding another thing, and that is that it's not enough to bring everything into the light, all the halachic theories into the light by reaching the final halachic verdict and conclusion. That's not enough, because that can be done in thought. A person can learn in his mind, in his thought, a topic in the Mishnah, a topic in the Gemara, and he goes back and forth, and he brings into the later poskim, and beginning with Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel and Rav, Mavai, and all the discussions back and forth, and then he goes through the later poskim and so on, the Rishonim, the Achronim, and he reaches the Psak Halacha. All this can be done in his mind. So that has to be done, as we just learned, because the final halacha, that is the Dvar Hashem, that is the ultimate revelation of Dvar Hashem, which is the source of life in this world. Everything is created through this divine speech. So we are resonating and we are reverberating the divine speech when we are learning, and we are bringing all matters down to the real world. Now the Rebbe is adding another thing. All that could be done in a person's mind. Now the Rebbe will say that it's not enough to come to the final clear understanding of this subject, of the halachic matter in this case, but one really has to utter it bedibur, with physical speech. Because it's true that to become one with Hashem, the main yichud with Hashem, the main unification with Hashem, is an inner yichud. Is in your mind, is in your heart. ומכל מקום, says the Rebbe, nevertheless, לא יצא ידי חובתו. A person, even though a person in his mind and heart can unite totally with God, through the learning in Torah in this case. So, no problem. The Rebbe says it's not enough. He is not fulfilling his obligation. He did not exempt himself from fulfilling his obligation for which his neshama came down to this world. Because it's not enough behirur ve'iyun levado. It's not sufficient to understand the subject in Torah all the way and thoroughly just with thought and just with reflecting in your mind. Because then this unification with God remains spiritual. It remains mainly with your soul. When is it fulfilling your mission in this world, even though you can unite with God in your mind, you can unite with God in your heart, but you're not yotze, you didn't fulfill the obligation for which you're here. And therefore it's not sufficient to do it behirur ve'iyun levado, by thinking and reflecting and deep studying. It's not enough. Ad sheyotzi bisfasav, until a person can only fully fulfill this yichud and fulfill his mission in this world, for which this whole yichud is about. Yotzi bisfasav, he has to say it with his lips, physical words, meaning that he has to express this yichud with Hashem physically, with his body. And the moving of the lips are considered by the Chachamim an action, a physical action, like Maaseh. It's a small Maaseh. So again, it's not enough to mentally unite with the Torah and with God through the Torah. That is more spiritual yichud and mostly connected, even though your brain is involved to some extent. But not to some extent, but is involved. But still, it's mainly your spiritual aspect that is connecting with God. In order to כדי להמשיך אור אין סוף ברוך הוא למטה. The neshama didn't come down to the body for itself. The neshama, she doesn't need correction. She doesn't need to be fixed and rectified. Her descent to the body is only to mamshich or en sof baruch hu lemata, to bring the infinite light of God, blessed be Him, down here. And that requires, it's not enough with iyun Torah, with deep study of Torah, even though it can be very inspired by it. Because the goal is to affect not only his divine soul, his nefesh elokis, but also and mainly, says the Rebbe, ad nefesh achiyunis. It has to affect the worldly aspect of our life, our ego, our vital soul, our body, and the world around us. And therefore, this nefesh achiyunis, this or en sof, has to come all the way down to the vital soul, to the soul that gives energy to the body. That cannot be done just by mental unification with God. You have to say it with your words. That you have to hear your words. It has to be a physical air moving from your lips. And then it can reach, you can bring or en sof, the divinity and holiness, into your nefesh achiyunis, your vital soul, your consciousness, this soul that is hashochenes bedam ha'adam, the soul that dwells in the blood of the person. So we're talking about the nefesh achiyunis. It's a nefesh, meaning that the most physical aspect of the nefesh is connecting with the most spiritual aspect of the guf, which is the stream of the blood. That's why the nefesh connects to the guf, to the body, through the blood. And therefore we cannot lose a lot of blood because the soul is attached to the body through the blood. So by saying the words of Torah physically, we are also bringing Or and Sof, divinity, into the body, the physical body. That this physical body, look inside, Amishaveh, Midomem, Tzomeach Chai. This physical body grows out of what? What is it created of? All the foods and drinks that we consume. That means inanimate plants and animals. We eat bread, we eat fruits, we eat meat, we eat fish, we eat minerals, the domem, salt, water. We eat from the inanimate and from the plant life and from animals. Why? כדי להעלות כולן להווי. In order to elevate all of them to Hashem, to Or and Sof. So when the person is using the blood that is created out of all these foods, from the inanimate, from the minerals, from the plant life, and from vegetables and fruits and so on, and wheat and grains, and then from the meat and fish, and chicken, so on. And then he uses this energy from his blood to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. By this, he refines and elevates everything that he ate and drank. And of course, that affects not only the person himself, but im kol ha'olam kulo, says the Rebbe, with the whole entire world. That every Yid has a part in the world, there's a portion in the world that belongs to him, that he is supposed to use in order to exist and in order to learn Torah and do mitzvahs. And this includes eating and drinking and garments and a house, a place to live, and all the things that he uses and his furniture, everything. And when all that gets together and is used to serve God through the Jewish people, the whole world gets elevated. Rabbi Ginsburg is sharing with us about someone who entered Yechidus with the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, the first years of the Nesius of the Rebbe, when the Rebbe just became a Rebbe. And he asked the Rebbe, how can you say that the Jewish people are refining and elevating the entire world? There are all kinds of parts of the world that didn't even hear about Jews. For instance, China. That time, it was the early years, the person says, there are like 300 million people in China. Now there are many more. I'm not sure exactly how many. If anybody knows, let me know. So there are so many hundreds of millions that didn't even hear about Jews, about Am Yisrael. How can you say that they too get elevated by Yidden learning Torah and doing mitzvahs? You know what the Rebbe says? Look at the back of the lining of your coat. It probably says made in China. So when all these products made in China are being used by a Yid, one way or another, to exist, to live, and to learn Torah, and to do mitzvahs, they too become elevated and join with their source. So I think we will stop here for now. Hopefully next time we will finish the Perek 49. And we have one more Perek chapter 50, that's the Nun, which will conclude the long discussion begin from the first Mem Aleph, and then especially Mem Beis, Mem Gimel, when Mem Gimel 43 began to describe all kinds of love. The love like Nafshi Visicha, like you are my life, like the way we love our life. The love like a child to a father. then we how to serve Hashem, to arouse life through Rachamim, the Midas HaRachamim, the compassion over the divine spark that is schlepped into Galus. And then we have Kamayim Apanim Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kamayim Apanim Lapanim. How every day Hashem, Yitzias Mitzrayim wasn't only in the past, but it's also every day through Torah and Mitzvot. Hashem takes us from where we could be, as low as in Mitzrayim, and enables us to exit the limitations of this world and unite with the Or Ein Sof, with the infinite. And how many tzimtzumim Hashem did in order to come and relate to us. And that will awaken tremendous love. And all this is to get to Shema. And in Shema we experience the ultimate love. And there, through this love, we include ourselves and then everything we are connected to, the entire world, in the unification of Hashem. And we bring everything together. Let's conclude with this: ulechalelan, to include and to unify and to unite all the inanimate, the plant life, the living beings from which the blood of a Jew is made, to include the entire world and all the workers and all the trucks and the truckers and all the shipping companies and everything, and the packaging company, everything, to include biyichudo ve'oiro yisbarach, to include in the oneness and in the light of God.
Chana, I think that I looked up, China is 1,450,000,000.
Wow. So we will stop here, and Imert Hashem next time conclude 49. We have one more perek of love, and then we're done with that, and then we have another two, three interesting parakim that are quite spiritual. But now let's do a little bit, let's spend the other part of the class, with your permission, with the Rebbe's view of our time. Matos-Massaei, and the Rebbe spoke the Devar Malchus, it was the same kvius of Matos-Massaei, both parshias connected together. And the Rebbe says that our parsha, Matos-Massaei, really, practically, the Rebbe says, lemaise, this Shabbos is Shabbos Chazak. We say Chazak, Chazak when it's Chazek 3 times, that we should be strengthened, because we are concluding the 4th Chumash, the 4th of the 5 Chumashim of the Torah, Sefer Bamidbar. But the Rebbe says that really, lemaise, we are concluding the entire Torah this Shabbos, because the next Chumash, Dvarim, is just a repetition, is just a review of all the other 4. So really, the conclusion of the Torah is this Shabbos. And right after that, we say Chazak, Chazak, Vanis Chazek, which means that we are strengthening ourselves in the Torah and mitzvahs, and the strengthening is strength, and then double strength and triple strength. It's a special strengthening. So the Rebbe asked, how is it? We need to understand, it's like a wonder, how is it that we always conclude Sefer Bamidbar and practically the Torah really, because nothing new is happening, it's just Dvarim is a repetition of the Torah, it's Mishnah Torah. How come this Chazak, this joyful Chazak that we say this coming Shabbos occurs in the 3 weeks and even in the 9 days? These days are days of mourning on the destruction of the temple, that indicates not strength, it indicates destruction, it indicates weakness, not strengthening. What is the connection between that and Chazak, Chazak when it's Chazek? Somebody's house collapses and falls apart and destroyed, and then Chazak, Chazak when it's Chazek. So the Rebbe says, well, you might say, well, you feel weak. It's weak. It's these days we need chizuk. We need to be strengthened, And therefore we are proclaiming Chazak, Chazak v'nizchazek. But the Rebbe says no. It's not that we are weak and we need strength, that we are, it's this Shabbos, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe completely turns the view from a view of weakness to a view of strength. How so? The Rebbe says like this: it's not that we need to add some strength to this time. This Shabbos, the Rebbe says, is called Shabbos Chazak, Shabbos of strength. That means, the Rebbe says, that from this Shabbos, the coming Shabbos itself, strength is coming. We don't have to strengthen it. It strengthens us. That means the Shabbos itself strengthens us. Not that the Shabbos is the Shabbos of 3 weeks and it's weak and therefore it requires that we should scream Chazak, Chazak, v'nizchazek to strengthen the Shabbos. No, the Rebbe says, the other way around. This Shabbos is a powerful Shabbos that gives us strength. Then the Rebbe says, this Chazak, Chazak v'nizchazek that we proclaim this Shabbos is simply connected side to Parshas Matos and side to Matos-Massaei. This year we are learning them together, and side to both of them together, as happens this year. But it looks like, seemingly, the Rebbe says, if you take the concepts of Chazak, strong and sturdy and solid, it goes more with Matos. Matos means a staff, a mate. It's a strong stick that doesn't break so easily. It indicates strength. It's firm, it's solid. Unlike Massaei. Massaei is traveling. You go from place to place. It's not solid, it's not stable. It's up and down and you go here, you go there. That's not the Chazak. Chazak is the Matos. Nevertheless, we say the Chazak after Massaei. And sometimes we join Matos also and sometimes not. So it's mostly connected with Massaei. So we need to understand how. And the Rebbe explains about Chazaka. Chazak v'nizchazek. Bechlal, the inyan of Chazaka. Chazaka is when something is established strongly, when it's repeated 3 times. So Chazaka, a strong establishment, is connected, the Rebbe says, to the number 3. Especially when we announce 3 times, Chazak, Chazak, v'nizchazek. This Chazaka emphasizes the power and the strength of holiness, of Kedusha, even when there is opposition. Because number 1 indicates pure holiness. Number 2 indicates opposition to holiness. But number 3 indicates overcoming opposition and the light of Kedusha shining bright. The Rebbe goes into another discussion here of how there are different ways how the chazak, the strength, comes. That it comes milemala lemata, or it comes from building the below and making it stronger, or obviously both have a maila, and these 2 kinds of strengthening, whether it comes from above or comes from the strengthening of the muscles of the below, each one has a maila. The maila of the above is that it is really a huge strength coming from above. But the chesaron is, it doesn't come, it's not internalized enough. The maila of the below strengthening itself is that it's solid because it acquires it and that internalizes it and it's part of itself, however it's limited. So one is milemala lemata is represented by matos, the lemata lemala from below up is represented by Massaei. How Bnei Yisrael, really the exiting of Mitzrayim is the birth of the Jewish nation, and how we traveled. The Rebbe doesn't talk about it here, but I mean only hints to it, that the traveling is the traveling of life, the traveling through life in this world, from place to place, from level to level until we refine and strengthen our emotional and spiritual and muscles. And that's the Maila of Massaei. The Chazak, we say on that we milamaila from below are working to refine ourselves. That has something very dear to God and something very high and solid. And therefore the Chazak, we say dafka on the Massaei. Yes, there are many ups and downs, but it's dafka that journey that has its downs as well and has its ups. And each traveling is another lesson and another growth and another refinement of another aspect of the middles that we are refining as well. But the growth is growth that is part of us, and therefore it's very solid. And Chazak v'nis Chazek, we say on Massaei. The Rebbe says that, of course, the Shleimus is when we have, like this year, both parshas together. Sai, Matos-Massaei. Sai, the revelation of the light from above that is not limited, very high light. And Sai, a thorough refinement of the below that can contain it. That's the ultimate yichud, that's the ultimate unification. And this is especially so and very obvious when that who is called to the Torah, when Matos and Massaei are connected, is called to the Torah on Revi. And in Revi, he reads a part from Parshas Matos and a part from Parshas Massaei. And with these parshas, we conclude the Revi, the Arba, the fourth, again Revi, the fourth, the Sefer HaRevi, the Chumash HaRevi, the fourth Chumash of the Torah, Bamidbar. And in a condition, the Rebbe says, that this connection is done through the number 3, Chazaka. So we have the combination of the above and the below. And when this is done through the Revi, through the fourth Aliyah, then it is solidifying this connection very strongly. It's like the difference between having a table of 3 legs, the Rebbe says, which you can use, and having a table of 4 legs. The table of 4 legs represents much more stability and strength. So, the end of the fourth Sefer of the Torah, we begin the 5th Sefer, Dvarim, and the Chodesh, we begin also the Chodesh HaChamishi. This Shabbos, this Friday, is the first of the Torah Chodesh HaChamishi, the 5th month, Av, and the number 5. The Rebbe went to a deeper discussion. I want to do it in Ba'ofen HaMiskabel, as some people say. So the number 5 indicates Gilui Elokus, a divine revelation which is higher than any measure, and therefore has the power to unite the Elyon with the Tachton, the above with the below. Now the Rebbe says we can understand why always proclaiming Chazak v'nis Chazek on the 4th Sefer in the Torah happens and occurs in the 3 weeks that are connected with the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, because the purpose of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash wasn't chas v'shalom for the destruction itself, says the Rebbe. It is for the sake of building the 3rd Beis HaMikdash that will be stronger and will have a special unique strength, an eternal strength. In truth, says the Rebbe, the eternity of the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, the everlastingness of the 3rd temple began already in the 1st temple. And because even if the Jewish people merited, the 1st temple would remain forever. And even when they didn't, the eternity of the 1st temple remained. Milsad lemala, there is no churban, there is no destruction. It's only in the apparent buildings there is destruction. The Rebbe says that the power that comes from the world is not enough because it's limited, and therefore each Beis Mikdash from the first and the second did not last. The first Beis HaMikdash was built by Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, was connected more by Yeshev Shlomo al Kiseh Havaye, is connected more to Milamala Lamata, the highlight that came down. But the world was not ready to absorb all of it, and therefore it didn't last. The second temple was mainly shayach to the world, and therefore, as we said before, is the maila from the lemata lemailas, that from below up the refinement is stronger, is more solid than just receiving inspiration from above. And therefore the second Beis HaMikdash was taller and longer in time. But still, not sufficient. Milamata lemala alone is not sufficient either. And this is the chidush, the new thing of the third temple, that will be eternal and everlasting and strong. Sai mitzad the Gilui Eloki, the divine revelation in it, that becomes in a manner of unlimited. And Sai, the connection and the union of it with the world that will be complete, that the world itself will be in a complete state. And that's represented by the number 3, and it will remain in the world forever. And therefore, the Rebbe continues and say that sometimes connected to the number 3 and 4 and 5, went further Kabbalistically to the exploration of these numbers in connection to the Geula. But then the Rebbe added that this Erev Shabbos, the Friday, is the Yortzeit of Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, the first day of the month of Menachem Av. As it says in our Parsha, as it says in, wasn't it today? In the Chitas. Vayal Aaron HaKohen el Hor HaHar. Aaron HaKohen ascended to the mountain Hor HaHar that is made of 2 mountains, one on top of the other. Vayam Sham, and Rashi says that he made Neshika, also a kiss, today it's established as kissing. So the Met Benishika was a beautiful passing of kissing God. That's how he passed away. And to the extent that Moshe Rabbeinu was jealous of his death, and he was praying to have a similar death, which he did. And that was this Friday, B'chodesh HaChamishi, B'echad LaChodesh, on the 5th month, on the 1st of the month. Bichlal, the Rebbe says, in the entire Torah, there is not one time a mention of anybody's passing. Not Moses, not Miriam, not Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the fathers, nobody. Only Aaron HaKohen. If this is the case, for sure there is a connection between the date of Echad B'chodesh HaChamishi, the first day of the 5th month, and the avodah of Aaron HaKohen. And we know that at the day of the passing, all the koiches and all the accomplishments and the peulos of the deceased are revealed and bring salvations to the world. The avodah of Aaron, therefore, is emphasized mainly on the day of his passing. When Aaron passed away, people mourned him for 30 days. They were crying, Kol Beis Israel, because Aaron loved everyone. As the Mishnah says, Aaron loved shalom, loved peace, and roidev shalom, he pursued peace. Oev esabrios, he loved every human being. Umakarvan la Torah, and brought them close to the Torah, to the divine knowledge. And when Aaron passed away, the clouds of glory, the ananei hakavod, disappeared. The ananim, the clouds that surrounded Bnei Israel in the desert, the protecting clouds, were for the merit of Aaron HaKohen. And the connection is very simple, says the Rebbe. The manna came down for the schus of Moses, of Moshe Rabbeinu. It was measured. Only a certain amount came down. each one didn't get more than Omer legulgoles. The Maim, the water that came for the schus of Miriam, wasn't limited like the man, but each one got its own channel of water. However, Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory, surrounded the entire Jewish people equally. And they came for the schus of Aaron, that loved the entire congregation, because he saw the divine essence that unifies everyone. And it is hinted in his name. Aaron has the two letters Har, mountain, in the middle of the name Aaron is Har, Hey Resh, which means a mountain and represents in Kabbalah love. The Aleph in the beginning of the word Aaron represents the Aleph is the Pele, the love, the wondrous love, what is called Ava Rabba, which is also the seder of the letters of the word Aaron. Aleph, Hey, Resh is Rashi Tevos Ava Rabba that is discussed in the Tanya. That means that Aaron represents the Ava that is beyond Atzilus, is the Ava of Keser, is the Chesed of Keser, is infinite, has no boundaries. Ava Rabba, great love. And what's the Nun at the end of Aaron? The final Nun represents the fact that this love came down and extended to each and every person of the Jewish community, even those that were way below. Because the level of Aaron, says the Rebbe, was higher than any division, and therefore he loved everyone equally as well. He came from the Keser. Ava Rabba is Keser. Everyone equal in Keser, no higher and lower. One of the main functionings of Aaron, the central ones, Aaron a Kohen, Aaron the priest, is Birkas Kohanim, the priestly blessing. There is a mitzvah from the Torah to bless the Jewish people every day with the priestly blessing. And it exists today as well. Stam bracha, a regular bracha, brings divine shefa, divine flow from up down. And tefillah is an awakening from below up. But the Maila of Birkas Kohanim, that it combines both. It functions as a bracha and as a tefillah. On one hand, it's like a bracha, it brings from up down, and at the same time, it's like a tefillah, it's part of tefillah. It elevates the below to the above. Birkas Kohanim represents the third level, which is higher than Torah and tefillah. And therefore, Birkas Kohanim also has 3 brachos, the number 3. You can also see it hinted in the lifespan, in the years of Aaron's life, says the Rebbe. He lived 123 years. 3 years more than his brother Moses. Moshe Rabbeinu lived 120 years. Aaron lived another additional 3 years. That represents the avodah of Aaron, to go higher than the number 1, higher than the number 2, to the number 3. And this is also the kesher, the connection that unifies both. Milemala lemata and milemata lemala. Like the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi unifies the first temple and the second temple. And this is also the connection of Aaron to his date of passing, which is the first of the 5th month. The 5th month is connected to the number 5 that shows on the ultimate unification. Now we're not going to explain of the upper and the lower. And the first day of it represents also, the first, the Aleph, represents the number one, the oneness that is higher than any division. And therefore the date of the passing of Aaron HaKohen is reflecting his avodah, the connecting of the Hala, the ascending, the elevating from below up, and the Hamshacha from up down, combining them both in Birkas Kohanim, and emphasizing the nekuda of oneness and achdus and unity in the Jewish people that is represented by the clouds of glory that came in the schus of Aaron HaKohen, that surrounded lovingly the entire Jewish people equally without any division. And this is, the Rebbe says, the right proper preparation for the 6 months, the months of Elul, which also has Ani ledoidi, milemata lemaila, vedoidi li. So, what is the lesson? We are concluding, dear precious holy ladies. What's the lesson from that? Says the Rebbe, the lesson, the horah from all this is this: that when we are standing in a time that is so intimately connected with the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima, it's tot, we are mamash in the threshold of the Geula Amitis V'Ashleima. Sai mitzad Parshat Shavua, Matos-Massaei. Sai mitzad the 5th month that is coming. Chodesh Chamishi lepardes Priya, that bli gvul. And Sai mitzad connection of the 3 weeks with the 3rd temple. We have to emphasize more than any other time, the Rebbe says, especially now, the nekudas ha'achdus, the core point that unites all Yidden, that it ascends any division, any differences, and any division between one and another. We have to do it by following the path of Aaron, the ways of Aaron. As the Mishnah commends us, Heve mitalmidav shel Aaron, together with other Talmidim, the Rebbe says, be a student, be a disciple of Aaron the priest, Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom, Ohev es Abrios, Mekavan la Torah. And since we are standing so close to the Geula, the Rebbe says, you don't have to do Avas Israel in order to annul the negativity of the sinas chinam. For many years we learned that do Abbas Yisrael in the 3 weeks, because you have to counteract the sinas chinam, the baseless hatred that separated one Jew from another, because of which the temple was destroyed. The Rebbe says this is not what it's about now. Now it's not about annulling the negative reason why the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Now the reason for the destruction already was rectified, the Rebbe says. Now, why are we doing Abbas Yisrael? You know why, the Rebbe says? Because we should begin to taste. Still in the time of Galus, we are just at the end of Galus, but still we are in Galus. We should now taste the atmosphere and the air of Ahavas Yisrael, the wondrous inter-soul connection, Ahavas Yisrael, that will dwell between us, between human beings, between one person and another, and how much more so between one Yid and another at the time of the Geula. It will be love that have no boundaries. And now the Rebbe says that we are already psyching ourselves to live in the spirit of Geula. We should already practice this love and taste from this love. And when we fulfill Oves Abrios, just as it will be in the time of Geula, we also come to Mekarvan la Torah. What Torah? Torah Chadasha. New Torah that Mashiach will learn with the whole nation. Bekarov Mamash. And this is also connected with Pirkei Avos, the Rebbe says in Shabbos. Reb Shimon Omer, Rebbe Zahir Bekriya Shema uBetfila. Reb Shimon said that you should be careful. This is Reb Shimon ben Nesanel, that has a very special connection to the learning of the secrets of the Torah. and he was constantly engaged with esoteric parts of the Torah. Nevertheless, he dafka chose to emphasize, tell us, people, to be careful in Kriyat Shema and in davening, in prayer. He didn't tell us to be careful in Torah. He told us, be careful with Zahir b'Kriyat Shema and in Tefillah. Because being engaged in Torah only belongs to certain people, not to all Bnei Israel. But it's shaykh to all Bnei Israel, to all people, to be careful in Kriyat Shema and in davening. To be present in your davening when you talk to God. And Reb Shimon continued and revealed the Zahirus, Hevei Zahir, Zahir milishon Zohar. You should shine, Zohar and light, shine even in Tefillah. That even though the main light and shine is connected with Torah, Torah or, but in Ora, but he, the Rebbe said, Reb Shimon ben Esadnel caused that the light of Torah should be drawn to everyone, like Aaron, that was Oev Abrios u'Mekarvan LaTorah. And the Rebbe connected the both, the Ora Torah with the Tefillah. Also a connection to the number 3 that connects the 1 and the 2. Then the Rebbe concluded by saying that the emphasizing the unity between people is also connected to performing siyumim on Masechtas of the Mishnah and the Gemara, the 9 days, in the 9 days, that we do siyumim of Masechtas every day of the 9 days in order to increase in Simcha Shel Mitzvah, and we connect it with Nesina Tzedakah. Of course, we should increase in giving charity, and it's very important to unite, the Rebbe says, especially that year that the Rebbe spoke, and I'm sure now as well, to unite as many people in hearing the siyumim. Berov Am Hadras Melech, even including small children. And it's very similar, the Rebbe says, similar to the siyumim that we do Erev Pesach. When we bring the children, we do the pechoros, the firstborns, are making siyumim Erev Pesach. Now we are making siyumim Erev Tisha B'Av. And these siyumim Erev Pesach are connected with a very intimate kesher, the Rebbe says, with the siyumim in the 9 days. The siyumim Erev Pesach are the preparation for the Geula of Pesach. And the siyumim Erev Tisha B'Av in the 9 days are a preparation for the Geula Amitis Vashleima. And the main thing is that through good achlatos, good decisions and resolutions, the Geula Amitis Vashleima will come bepoal mamash. That means that we are already standing on the threshold of entering to the land. We will cross the Yarden, we will enter the Holy Land and the Beis HaMikdash, all of us, all Bnei Israel, Neshamas, Begufim, together with Moshe and Aaron and all the previous generations that will be resurrected and come to life, and we will learn the Torah with Mashiach Tzidkenu, take it from Miyad Mamash now.